Hello and welcome once again to Boomer 11. Today we are going to be talking about another team, probably one of the contenders definitely for the World Cup, two-time World Cup winning team, France. That is a team we're going to be covering today. Exciting squad really because this is the team. Remember that is the defending champions as well. Didier Deschamps' team last year onwards went on to win when they routed, Croatia in the finals of the Russia World Cup. But this time around, the story is a little bit different. There has been quite a lot of a dip in form, you would say, some injury concerns as well, as is what has been common with many other teams as well. Before I get to able, let me introduce you to Boomer 11, the risk-free fantasy app that you can definitely experience without playing, without investing any money, but at the same time getting your rewards for the amount for your strategies as well. You can download it in Apple App Store and Google Play Store. But thank you so much, Abel, for joining us. How much do you think this squad, this French squad, can go into in the World Cup that is going to be coming up?
To be very honest, it's still very early days, right? To really predict how far they can go and what is their probability going into the World Cup. But one thing is definitely sure: this team has got the talent in them, and they are the defending champions. Let's all agree to the fact that they are coming into this tournament as defending champions. And if history doesn't repeat, I hope they don't get kicked out of the group stage. That's been the recent curse which has been happening in World Cups where
Yeah.
the defending champions have been knocked out. They've been knocked out quite cheaply, and that's something which I personally hope that doesn't happen at least this time around, because this team is way too talented to be knocked out, and the form and the peak levels at which these players are playing in, they are. I hope they have reached a level where if they get knocked out, it's going to be huge. I mean, it's going to be huge. But the fact is also that this team hasn't been performing well, right? There are two ends to this.
Yeah.
The fact that they are the defending champion, the fact that they have some of the biggest names in world football, individually speaking, one of the most talented and one of the most exciting squads out there. But now, if we have to talk about them as a team, because World Cup is all about team performance, not about individuals. Not every once make an 11. It is about 11 players stepping out and actually giving it all. If I have to tell about that, maybe France are lying a little behind. If I have to say about the lead up, the performance in Euros, they got knocked out by Switzerland in Euros. They've been having a tough time, to be very honest. And they're put in a group once again with Australia, Tunisia, and Denmark, which is considerably an easy group for them. I mean, it should be a cakewalk, to be very fair. But then Denmark has been their bogey team in the recent past. So not easy for them. But as I say, you never know with this team. They can do anything. It's an unpredictable team.
Absolutely. Maybe let's talk about one of the biggest concerns right now with this French team. Pogba and Mbappe, there was this controversy that came up where, Pogba's brother apparently went on to accuse that there was some bit of
Mhm.
black magic involved, not going into the accuracies of it, but how much do you think? Obviously, he isn't playing. I think Pogba is missing out of the World Cup, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
but that would have affected him, right? Especially because Kylian Mbappe has been accusing the French football team of treating him badly. Something that he, I think, accuses all his teams now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's what I said, right? They are very good individual players, but can they play as a team? This is not the first time we're seeing a controversy with the French national team. Didier Deschamps, he's got a job in his hands. And to be very honest with me, to be honest, I would say this team has got a lot of issues off the field and on the field. If you talk about last year when Rabiot's mom just came out saying that my son is not getting enough minutes to play and he's getting involved in dressing room atmosphere, that was just ridiculous for me for a mother. It just reminded me of a school kid whose mom comes out
Yeah.
saying that why not give my son enough chances. So these are things which you keep seeing with French national team, and it got to the peak when Paul Pogba's brother came out saying that there's a black magic happening, and this is what's happening in the dressing room. I don't want to go and talk about the voodoo kind of stuff about it. It's just hilarious. I was laughing. It really caught me in the moment I started reading it. But then that is a reality, right? That is a reality. The players are not gelling well. The fact is that this team has experimented a lot. This team has been experimenting a lot. There is no consistency with the system. There's no consistency with the playing 11. These factors do come into play, especially when you're going into a World Cup, and that's why I personally think they're very underprepared going into this World Cup if you're comparing with any other team, and hence I believe not the ideal way for them to go into a World Cup like this.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the biggest clouds, right? Also, I mean, the fact that Mbappe is someone who's not, I mean, looked, I would say, who's had some uncertainty with the French team as well. He's not been the player that he's been in club level in the French team. I mean, of course, he's won a World Cup. That year was great for him, but in the Euros, where he missed that decisive penalty. After that penalty, how much do you think now Mbappe has become? Has Mbappe really has he made this his own team, or is that really the issue? The fact that he hasn't been able to make this team his own.
It's a mix, I would say, because for Mbappe, um, I've never liked the way how Mbappe has actually gone about himself as an athlete over the last couple of years. Since he's got the recognition, since he's been the focal point of a lot of attention, he's not been able to, you know, carry himself in a way he should be carrying. As a youngster, he's still 23-year-old, man. I mean, let's be very honest. He's still a 23, 24-year-old
Yeah.
youngster. He's got a lot of ego at this age, to be fair, and the ego which is not really helping him at all. Look at the kind of controversies which has surrounded him in the PSG team. In Paris, they do treat him. They want him. They really want him. And in France national team, they really want him as well. The fact is that they can't play with this World Cup without Mbappe. They have to build a team around Mbappe. But here is a fact, right? Alongside Mbappe, you have a Karim Benzema, Ballon d'Or winner. Ballon d'Or winner is coming at the peak of his career at this point. So, does Mbappe really enjoy playing with Benzema? He does, of course, he does. But Benzema will Benzema take all his egos and tantrums? I don't think so. So here is what the
Yeah.
problem lies. Will Didier Deschamps play a system which Mbappe wants? Because he's been very demanding as a player, right? The fact is that Mbappe is way too
Yeah.
talented. Mbappe is a star. Mbappe has become a superstar, but he's the the issue. We had a live today earlier saying that no player can be bigger than the team he plays. So I've always maintained that as well. No player is bigger than the badge. The badge should be number one, and especially representing a nation. The badge should be number one, and that's where I personally feel Mbappe should be able to, you know, really come down, mellow down as a player, mellow down his ego, and understand that okay, I have to fit into a system with Didier Deschamps really wants me to play in. If it's to play a 4-4-2 with Benzema, if I want to be a second striker, I will be. If I have to be playing in the left mid role at a 4-2-3-1, I will do that as well. I cannot be the focal point of all attention. I'm just one of the players who's trying my best to win France another World Cup. Now the question is this again: he's already won a World Cup. Now, when he won the World Cup, he was not the center point of all the attention. But then in the last 4 years, since that World Cup win, he's become a star which nobody thought he would ever become. Everyone knew he had the potential, but he's really reached that. He's really reached the potential. He's been able to pin at least 30, 35 goals every season, and credits to him for that. He's definitely a generational talent for all the reasons. He's got pace, he's got ability, he's got finishing skills, and he's got trickery with the ball as well, which any player in the world will like to have. And that's why Mbappe has really become the icon for France national team. And I'm quite liking it. I'm quite liking the way how he's going about his footballing things. But off the field, I am still not pleased. That's what
Yeah.
France national team will be very worried about. I think we can pull the squad and see what the
Exactly. Right.
team
I
is.
mean,
Yeah, go
yeah, I
ahead, go
mean,
ahead.
let's just move on to that as well. I mean, let's start with the goalkeepers right there. Lloris, Areola, Mandanda. Do you think these three are probably on the older side of things, because probably three players who are towards the later half of their career more than the
Yeah.
especially I think Mandanda is pretty much and Lloris both, but all three are still quality keepers who have done well for their club at club levels, haven't they? So, how do you reckon
Yeah.
these three are going to come up against some of the best strikers?
I mean, to be very honest, these three are experienced at the end of the day. And Hugo Lloris, is a fantastic keeper, and he's not had the best of times with Spurs. And even with Areola, I know he's not
Mhm.
had the best of seasons with West Ham to start off with as well. So goalkeeping is
Yeah,
an issue, but I still think um under Didier Deschamps and with the kind of defensive acumen, with the kind of defensive enforcement he's got, goalkeeping can be a thing which can be still covered up because the kind of players he's got in front of him. Look at the players of who Lloris has got in front of him. If you look at France, the biggest strength is their defenders. Look at the list of the defenders they've got. They've got Jules Koundé, who's been doing well. Saliba, who's been
Yeah.
doing excellent with Arsenal. What a season he's had. Lucas Hernandez, who I believe will start in the left back position. The only issue is Kimpembe is coming off an injury, and Konate has done exceedingly well for Liverpool as well since he's come back off the injury. Varane, he's also injured right now.
I think
Interesting how he's going to come back.
Kimpembe is been withdrawn from the squad, right? Kimpembe. I think he's missing out on the
Uh,
World Cup now.
yeah,
That's the news I
yeah, yeah. It's
heard
still not confirmed,
coming
if
up.
I know. Yeah. So that's one thing. As of what I know, Kimpembe was named, and I think it's still a cloud looming over Kimpembe. But if Kimpembe doesn't start, they might just go for someone like a William Saliba or Jules Koundé. The thing
But I
with
think
their issue
with
is the
Saliba and Kunde, I don't.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead, go
think the
ahead.
major issue is gonna be the fullbacks. They don't have depth in fullbacks position. They have a Jules Koundé to play on the
Mhm.
right hand side if maybe Pavard doesn't really get going or if he faces an injury. But when it comes to centre backs, I think Varane will start for sure. But who's going to start with Varane? I think Theo Hernandez will be a left back for sure for this team. He's got the pace. He's had a decent season with Milan, and I think Varane should ideally start with a Saliba, but then I think he might prefer Varane and Konate, in my opinion. And I think he's got it right to even go with Konate. I mean, they've got the depth as I mentioned, and if they're playing three at the back, I think it's not a bad idea to start both Varane, Konate, Kunde, or a Saliba. I think that's going to really help them. But it also depends on the system he's going to deploy. But until very recent times, they were playing, 5-2-3, and that's something which I thought was not good enough with this France squad. Maybe Griezmann as the attacking midfielder, and then they had Benzema and the partnership was Benzema and Mbappe up front. Maybe not the ideal thing for this France squad. Maybe that's where I think uh, it all depends on the system they're going to play, right? They are going to miss out on two creative players, especially likes of Pogba and Kante missing out. So
Yeah.
which means possibility of Chouameni and Kamavinga starting, which I don't think will happen as well. Let's look at the midfield options they've got. They've got a Rabiot, and Rabiot has not had the best of seasons as well. In the recent past, he's been okay. That's why I
Mhm.
personally feel
I
because there
think
is no creativity.
also with
Yeah, good, good.
Rabiot, there have been a lot of what do you say, accusation of attitude problem, which is something that you look at. I mean, which is something that has become really it is really flared in the past few years, right? That he isn't someone who has the right attitude when it comes to playing football.
Yeah, just in this 11, we made this 11 before the release of the squad. So there's no fall on Mendy, right? So there'll be Theo Hernandez there. And on that note, like what is happening with Kamavinga? Kamavinga has also not had the best of starts with Real Madrid. He's coming off the bench, not had enough minutes under the belt, whereas Chouameni is had, which I think will be the reason why Chouameni would be the considered starter in this lineup alongside Rabiot. But now the biggest question is who's going to be the creative midfielder. They don't have a Pogba, they don't have a Conte. So, which means they might have to just look at someone like a Griezmann to play at number 10. And Didier Deschamps, whilst he was naming the squad, he also did mention that he's going to go into a 4-2-3-1 kind of formation leading into this World Cup. Very interesting to see how he's going to operate that with Chouameni and Rabiot as the pivots. If they're going to play a double pivot system, the issue is going to be again who's going to be the number 10, which I think Griezmann has to be the number 10 for this team, and Dembele at the right hand side and Mbappe on the left hand side. But the issue again is Mbappe won't do the defensive work for you, man. If at all, if Theo
Yeah.
wants to overlap Mbappe and on defensive transition, Mbappe doesn't do that. I've seen enough of Mbappe to understand that Mbappe doesn't get involved in defensive transitions. So
Yeah.
that's where the problem is going to start, right in half spaces and to also in defensive transition. If they're going to play that system, Mbappe will not do that. And will Mbappe be happy playing a left mid position? Maybe yes, maybe no. Yet to find out. I'll be very keen to see how they start off the World Cup. If they get off to a decent start, maybe against Tunisia or Australia, where they can pin in goals, and Denmark game is going to really decide the group. If Denmark, who has been their bogey team, they got thrashed by Denmark in the recent past. They've been getting thrashed left,
Yeah.
right, and center against Denmark. Even in the last World Cup, they couldn't defeat Denmark. It was a draw. So I personally think this team is going to really struggle in terms of their chemistry, in terms of the way they're shaping up. Until something really surprising happens, they're not making it to the semis.
That's a big call, I mean, right there. But it does seem like that. I mean, this team has been a bit disjointed. Also, been if you look at, I think Denmark, the reason probably why Denmark is getting better of them is Denmark is a team which plays as a unit, right? We've seen that in the Euros. They played together, especially that incident with Christian Eriksen that really brought them all together. As we already discussed on previous lives before. But I mean, my question being, do you think that midfield, the amount of options that he's gone with? Obviously, there's a lot. I think five at the back is probably the system he's going with the amount of defenders that he has right now, because a lot of them are. I mean, it looks like there's a lot more backup in defenders when it comes to. I mean, if you compare to midfielders. But now let's look at some of the forwards that they have, right? As you mentioned, Griezmann could be that pivotal player who could be the influx of creativity in this team. But he hasn't really had that kind of game time, right? Even though I think now he's a player that is going to Atletico Madrid. I think Atletico Madrid has brought him. If I'm not wrong, you're able. But do you reckon that lack of game time leading up to the World Cup will hurt him and French chances a lot?
Yes, that is true. That is true. But then the fact I also mentioned the Ronaldo's live as well. This World Cup is all going to be about players who try to remain fit, the players who have got enough energy on their
Mm.
in their legs, because they've all been. Want to use this word called as slaves. They've been treated as absolute slaves of a club and demands, leading in 3 games a week, day week in and week out. In amidst that, they had to come and play some club international friendlies and all that. Now even just 1 week before the World Cup, they are in La Liga or Premier League trying to fight out, which I think is just ridiculous. That they're treating players like they're
Yeah.
machines, which is just not good enough. And they've all played enough games, but look at their forwards. Right? Benzema injured for last 1 month, not had enough game time, especially this year, because he's facing a lot of injuries, and that's also because he's leading into that part of his career where injuries will try to creep in a lot more. Griezmann not had
Mm.
enough minutes under the belt. Giroud has been really doing well for Milan, right? And that's
Yeah.
typical Giroud. He'll give you. He was your striker when you won the World Cup. His impact cannot be measured in stats. He'll hold the ball for you. He will do some dirty work, and especially when it comes to winning the ball up front, if at all you want to press, which I don't think Didier Deschamps will ever do that. He's a very pragmatic manager, and France went on to win the World Cup by playing pragmatic football. They look like the most attacking team
Mm.
on a FIFA. If you're playing a FIFA game, yes, wow, what a team! I've got pace up front. I'll just go out there and score goals like for fun, but that doesn't happen, right? And it's also got to do with the
Yeah.
fact that uh, especially when you're talking about a team gelling together, a lot of factors. I think psychological factor is definitely one of them. We don't talk about it enough in football, but it is a factor, especially in a world stage, especially in a World Cup. Last time they had that. This time they do not have that, which is very clear because of all the off-field things which has been happening. So Didier Deschamps' first thing he has to do is to make this team gel together, make this team believe that they are a team, not individual egos. If the moment you throw that out, let's see what happens. And when I have to talk about striker position, I think Benzema will be, of course, the sure starter. But the fact is also that they do not have a creative midfielder. Again, going back to the fact that Genduzi also plays like a stadium number 6. Rabiot can possibly be the person who can maybe go into half spaces. Fofana is another CDM. Chouameni prefers playing in number 6. So the only creative player I see is Griezmann, and he will be deployed number 10 for this team.
Yeah.
And it'll be also depending on how Dembele has got as well. Dembele will be a very important factor in this team, because him cutting in into the channels and creating chances for Benzema, or him linking up with Griezmann is going to be an important factor in this team when you look at the forward line. Very interesting to see how Nkunku goes about it as well. Exciting talent. He's not yet
Mhm.
made big for the France national team. As I say, when the big occasion demands, they really need someone like an Nkunku to come in and do the job. How many lives do you do in a day? Yeah, we've been doing a lot of lives today. I think that's the part and parcel of our work, and we love doing it. Absolutely, we love talking
I'm
about
so
sports.
glad, Priyanka, you've been joining us for each and every live. So thank you so much for that as well. You've
Yeah, I think
followed
we
us
joined us
throughout,
all.
I think, all the lives today. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
but yeah, I
very
mean,
that's very
let's just go on to that. I mean, even when I look at this team right here, Do you reckon the biggest issue for them, as you mentioned, is that midfield creativity? Because I think, are you asking a little bit too much from Griezmann also? Because then Griezmann will have to come back and help the team win the ball as well.
Yes, yes. So these are my problems with the France national team because they do not have a balance like last year, last World Cup. What I mean,
Yeah.
because last World Cup you had a Conte,
And
you
I
had a
mean, I
maturity.
just add another point, right? Yeah, I mean, how much of an importance is ball carrying midfielder like Pogba and Conte? Because those two midfield players are
Oh
going to
yeah,
be
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, am I audible now?
yeah. You are. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean both Pogba and Kante are two players who are able to our midfielders are able to win the ball at the back and then transition and bring it to bring it forward, serve it on a platter, as you would say. I know Kante hasn't looked as good, or Pogba also hasn't had the best time at club football, but they've both done a decent job at national level. Especially Pogba, who's had a sort of a lean period at Man United, but he's been the player for France football. But both of them are missing out. Is that a blessing in disguise as well? Because again, Pogba and Mbappe might have had some, might have been at loggerheads, because I mean, Mbappe doesn't take kindly to such things being said about him.
Yeah, yeah. Fact that's another thing to be considered. Yet again, right? Going back to the point where they don't gel as a team, they're not been able to play as a team so far. Whatever I've seen of them, they've been really struggling to play as a team. But I personally feel at some stage at least, they will have to really pull their socks up. And if they're going to end up number two, they might face an Argentina in the round of 16, which I think is not going to be easy. Last time around, they really had it all against Argentina. I mean, they just went berserk against them. It was a very high scoring game. 7 goals were scored. It was 4-3. Pavard really striking there. Who doesn't forget that goal? Pavard, and that goal just really volleys it in. So I remember that game
Yeah.
very well. And yeah, so that was last World Cup. They played as a unit. They really wanted. They were very desperate after that loss in Euro finals. It just looked like they were more desperate to go out there to win that World Cup, because you felt like if they
Mhm.
don't do well in that World Cup, it's just a waste of talent. And that's why they were so desperate. But this World Cup, and you already saw it in the Euros as well, a lot of things were not going their way. Maybe, as you mentioned about creativity and ball carrying midfielders, I think Pogba's miss is huge. I know that he's not had the best of last 2 seasons, but then creativity is a big factor with this team, which is missing at this point. And N'Golo Conte, he can do both. He can carry the ball, he can do the dirty work for you. And when you compare it with the last World Cup, someone like a Maturi, so underrated. He had such a good game, especially the Argentina game where he was marking Messi. Not he jailed Messi literally in that game. So
Yeah.
these guys did. These guys are so good that sometimes they do get recognized, sometimes they don't get recognized. But that is not the factor here. The factor is that they do not have enough players. As much as we talk about France national team's depth, they've got depth in certain areas, especially the defensive areas. They've got depth, but certain areas they don't. Especially centre backs is an area where they've got immense depth across the world. If you look in every big team, there is a France national team centre back, and it's a fact. It's a fact there's a French national
Yeah.
team centre back in every team, because they've been having plethora of talent in centre back position. But when you look at right back, Kunde is a good right back option, but is he fit enough? That's another question. Is he fit enough? Because he's not had enough. He's gotten injured.
Mhm.
Benzema, is he fit enough? Kimpembe is almost out, so that's not another case. Lucas Hernandez is a good option. He's done decently with Bayern here and there, but I think Theo should start. Theo, the kind of season he's had with AC Milan, I think he's way, 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 way too good to be to be missing out. And yet again, coming to the goalkeeping position once again, right? Issues they might have it. They might once again have issues. It all depends. I think it all depends on how they start gelling again. But one area which I really like to see is how they turn Griezmann into that number 10, telling him that, okay, see, Griezmann, we want you to be like what you did for us in 2016 Euros or 2018 World Cup. You could do
Yeah.
both. 2018 World Cup, remember, he was a second striker to Giroud, and he did that job. He did that job pretty well. But Griezmann of 2018 and Griezmann of 2022 there's a stark contrast in that, right?
Yeah.
He's not the single Griezmann.
Exactly.
So that's what I'm going to be very interested in. I think it's not a bad option to play someone like a Kamavinga at a number 8, number 10 kind of a role, because I've seen him do that. He's a good ball progressor. He's very confident on the ball. He can win a ball and progress it and actually, split the defense as well. I've seen him do it time and time again with Madrid. So a possible option which Didier Deschamps might try, but knowing Didier Deschamps, he's a very, very conservative manager. He likes to play pragmatic football. He doesn't like to take. They don't press, man. This team barely presses. This team likes to stay behind, wait for the ball, then play on the counter. That's been the strength of this team because Mbappe has got pace and Dembele has got pace. So that's how they played. And Benzema will finish you. He can finish anything clinically. So that's been the strength of this team. That's where I like to see how this team plays.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough, because I think especially considering the fact that all these players have when they play in their club teams, all these players, be it Mbappe, be it Benzema, all these players have that level of service. I think even Benzema, for example, is someone who has to probably deal with the ball only in the final third and not before that. But in this team now, looking at how probably this team might doesn't have a creative defender. I mean, not defender, as a creative midfielder, as we've been speaking about it. How much do you think Benzema's role becomes important? Because Benzema is used to playing that second fiddle as well. Could he be the person who could probably feed Mbappe and Dembele on two sides, or will it be the other way around, where Mbappe and Dembele will try to feed Benzema? Because Mbappe would like to be fed rather than him feeding things, right? I mean, feeding the ball.
It all depends on the system. Number one, it secondly it depends on the kind of position which Mbappe is also going to play. If Mbappe is going to play as a left wing, left mid in that team, he's definitely going to cut in. Mbappe is not going to stay wide and going to pin crosses in for Benzema. That's not something which Mbappe will ever do. Once again, saying that that's Mbappe's trait. That's how Mbappe has been. That's what Mbappe would like to do. Make an impact by scoring goals. And also by scoring goals. That's one thing Mbappe would want to keep doing. He's not someone. It's not saying. I'm not saying that Mbappe will not assist for Benzema. But again, the fact is that Mbappe is going to cut in. He's going to leave the left hand side open, but is that going to benefit? So which means is Benzema going to drop in a little bit, drop into playing as a
Yeah.
false nine at times, which means which means Dembele and Mbappe can cut in a little bit, which I think Benzema is good enough of doing, but I don't think that's going to do France any good. France is better off Benzema staying as
Hmm.
a clinical target man and linking up with Mbappe. That's why I would love to have seen this France team play a 4-4-2 more than a 4-2-3-1. It fits their system a lot better. Maybe a Koeman can play on the left hand side, but and Koeman can play left hand side, Dembele on the right hand side, and through the center you can have maybe. I would have ideally liked to have had someone like Kamavinga and Chouameni to start, then see where it goes because they have got good chemistry. And these two young lads have got enough desire to go out there and win. They've been doing a decent job for Madrid as well. That's what I would have ideally liked to see. I don't think that's happening. And the moment Mbappe plays as a second striker linking up with Benzema, it really fits their system. But Didier Deschamps barely deploys a 4-4-2 system. He either goes to that fire at the back and two midfielders, then three there up front. So these are things which I think they will have to figure out at the start of the World Cup. I think Didier Deschamps definitely has a plan, but 4-2-3-1 is still a system which I don't see France doing very well in.
Let's talk about Didier Deschamps himself. I mean, when he won the World Cup for France, it was something that was celebrated around the world. He was credited highly for that. And back then, a lot of these players like Mbappe, for instance, were up and coming players. And now they've become stars in their own rights. There have been ego clashes. His team hasn't done that well as in Euros, and then again post it. Do you think this World Cup is probably a last hurrah for him, or at least the one gig where he has to save face, and if he wants to continue as France manager, is to do well in this World Cup?
I think this is the last of Didier Deschamps, to be very honest. Regardless of the result, I think this is the end of Didier Deschamps' era with France. I'm already hearing rumors about Zidane taking over, which is going to be very interesting, right? I'm not sure if Zidane will like it, but then Zidane is seen as a successor to Didier Deschamps to be taking over the French national team. But see, a lot of clubs also want Zidane to be part of their club, and
Yeah.
because of the success Zidane has had as a Champions League manager to win Champions League three in a row, repeat, nobody has done that. and Zidane has got the Midas touch as well.
Hmm.
And I think Zidane is a good man manager as well. I think someone like a Zidane will be the ideal man for a team like France because of so many ego clashes it has got. Now the next big thing is the Euros of 2024, which is 2 years away from now, and which is less time as well. We've got 20-22 months to really prepare for it. Ideally, 19 months to go for Euros because we are already doing this in November, which means you'll have possibly 18 months to prepare for Euros. And can they do it in 18 months? That's the question, which I think is going to be very interesting to see, in my opinion. Um, uh, I think right after the World Cup, you will see changes in France national team. Didier Deschamps has had a good legacy, right? What do you want? You only want a World Cup, and he delivered. He took them to the World Cup and won it quite comfortably, quite convincingly. Because in 2014, knocked out in the quarterfinals against a good German team. 2010, a horrible World Cup. They had likes of Thierry Henry and everybody there, but this just couldn't make it there. 2006 finalists. They lost in the penalties in the final. So to the 1998, Didier Deschamps, captain of the team, led them to the World Cup win in their home turf. So they've had decent success in recent past if you look in the last 2 decades, and and that's where I totally think it's time for transition as well in this French national team. They've got the youngsters, they've got great youngsters. That's all, except to the fact that French national team, the depth and talent they've got is crazy. And one can say this is also a golden generation of French national team. From 2016, it's everybody's been talking about the France national team. Everybody knew they could make big impact. Other 2016 Euros, they were too good. They missed out in their home turf by inches. I think they hit the bar twice in that final, and it had to be Eder striking for Portugal to take Ronaldo to his maiden ever international trophy. It had to be something special for that to happen. But after that, I knew they were seething. They really wanted a trophy, and that's why they won the 2018 World Cup. But since then, last Euros is where I felt they really looked disjointed at some stage. They really didn't play to their potential. They really did not play or link up in situations they really had to. Especially one of the games against Portugal, they were really off color there. One of the games against Germany, they won the game, but if I remember, it was still a game where I thought, they were not there, man. They were totally not there as a team throughout the course of the Euros. They made it out of the group and they got knocked out. So that's what happened with that team, to be very fair. And they got knocked out in the round of 16. And I wasn't really surprised. I thought it had to happen at some stage, and it did happen, right? Mbappe missing penalty was just adding, in a negative way, cherry on top of the cake, because everything was surrounding Mbappe's career, how he's gonna do, what he's gonna do, and really caught to him at that stage, and it was just the fall of events. But here it is, the last ride for Didier Deschamps. It's going to be interesting to see how he's going to manage. I think it's time we pull out the stats of some of the key players. The key players to watch out for is definitely
Yeah.
the two up
This
front.
is
Look at them. For Mbappe, international stats have been outstanding. 59 games, 28 goals, 21 assists. On the other end, Karim Benzema coming off a glorious season. Ballon d'Or winner, the best player in the world. For a reason, helped Madrid to the Champions League victory once again. Um, Top player, but leading into the World Cup facing some bit of injuries. So here is another issue with that.
Yeah, I mean, let's just look at. I mean, when we look at these stats, I think they are much, much more important because of the fact that, as you mentioned, you need these two players to really step it up when it comes to goal contribution. Because as we already spoke, the midfield probably looks a little bit, under question, and we don't know how well, both Chumeni and Kamavinga will do, because at the end of the day, they are playing their first ever World Cup. I know they play for Madrid. They are probably used to that pressure, but then it is going to be a different, kettle of fish, because we're hearing reports from Qatar that the temperature is still high compared to what Europeans are expected. I mean, are used to. I think it's still in the late 20. I mean, it's still in the end of the 20s. 26, 27, 28, which is going to be very
But you know
hot.
what, Jaren?
Obviously, yeah,
The last Euros, you had games in Spain and some of the countries which were played at 35, 40 degrees Celsius. So I think players are also kind of used to playing in these kind of temperatures now. I don't think it's going to be a major issue going into this Qatar World Cup, because European temperatures have gradually increased in recent past. If you talk about European temperatures maybe 2 years before and now, in Europe as well, in summers it's pretty hot. So I don't think weather will be a factor, but
Hmm.
the major factor for this France national team is going to be how they are going to handle pressure, especially like so Kamavinga and Germany. Great have handled pressure so far, really good in the big stage, especially in Champions League. If I talk about Kamavinga and Germany, when I'm talking about La Liga in the recent past, he's done really well. But it's now about how these two convert into a national team, because expectation when you come into a France national team is big, right? You are under spotlight. French media will be on to you. The fans are going to be on to you. The spotlight is
Yeah.
going to be on to you. I know you both are playing for the best club in the world, possibly. You've got a career which is ahead of you. You've got a career which is possibly very bright, more than any other youngsters, any other young midfielders in the world as well. So here is what they possibly have to do, is to just enjoy the World Cup more than thinking a lot about it, which I think is so important for in Real Madrid, for a Kamavinga, for Chouameni, there's a Modric, there's a Cruz. But in France, you don't have it now. You,
Mhm.
you both are the leading men. It's going to be interesting to see how they manage that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I suppose then that's pretty much almost everything covered, but we will obviously get to our segment and we do it right at the end, right? Let's look at the kits then for France football team this time around. Um,
Yeah, we will
yeah, I
pull
mean,
up
we'll
the
just,
kit.
I
It's
mean, by the time we wait, yeah, I mean, by it for that we wait. It's going to be interesting though. They are playing again, as we mentioned already. They're going to be playing in a group with, I think, a lot easier. The only team that they're going to have to worry about is Denmark. The one problem I think that I see with them is the fact that Denmark's team is a team which is very good at teamwork. So France will have to look to replicate the same. But now that we have the kits right here, able very simplistic kit. I think that's what we're seeing with Nike this year around for World Cup, but it
yeah.
looks simple, right? It looks simple and classy. I think that's how do you say it? It's simple and elegant.
Yeah, it's a classic France national team kit. I like both the white and also the dark blue. I mean, there's nothing much to comment on it. It's just classy. They've not gone with a lot of designs as a lot of other teams have gone. They just look very good. They just look very good. I think it'll really send out. It sends me good vibes as well. The way they don it.
Yeah.
I'll give them a 7 on 10, 7 on 10 or 6.5. Nothing nothing great also to talk about the kit, right? It's just plain kit. uh Maybe not the most extravagant of the ones we are
Creative,
seeing in
of
this
course.
World Cup. So that's why I'll just give them a 6.57 because of the classiness it has maintained.
Yeah, I think for me, probably a seven. Yeah, I think I'll stay seven for both. Obviously, not the most creative. All they have done is, create fabric of a particular color, but it's still classy in its own way. I love the golden and the blue that they've added to white, and it kind of, gives a very good, I would say, a classy vibe, a professional vibe. It's just that the French team has to play professionally on the pitch as well. But yeah, I think that was pretty much our coverage on France national team leading up to the World Cup, two-time World Cup champions, defending champions. Will they succumb to the defending champions curse is what we need to see. They already have succumbed to it to an extent at the Euros, but hopefully they turn it around at the champion, I mean, at the World Cup and end up being the champions, because if they come together, if the pieces come together, this team has the potential to go on to win, and it won't be as surprising, as because this is a champion team. It has not many of the players. I mean, the many of the players who were champions haven't actually been replaced. They're still there. You would say the core is still present, but it all remains to be seen is whether they'll play together. But thank you so much, Abel, for joining us. Thank you so much, everyone else is well. We will be back with a few more teams, and Priyanka, we will try to keep up covering a lot of things, because right before the World Cup, we will try and finish off all the contenders for the World Cup. But thank you so much for joining us. But before we leave you, make sure you download Boom 11 risk-free fantasy experience on Apple App Store and Google Play. Thank you so much, guys. Until next time, goodbye.